This is the second session for Women Group about meritocracy and leadership for women in public organizations. I introduce you to Africa Zanella. Hi, Africa. How are you? Africa is the president at Center for Sustainability and Gender Economics, CSGE. Director at Green Rubber Ltd. Also member of the Unido Green Industry Platform. A member of Spanish Economic Association since 2015. Africa, what do you think about the situation of women in the public sector, actually, right now?
Right now, I have to say that the public sector is very, through a number of measures, mostly in terms of legislation, has given quite a lot of attention to the role of women. Mm-hmm. When we talk about government or public sector, the public sector is a number of layers. One which is institutional, the other one which is national, the other one which is local. So there are many issues to the public sector. But overall, in my experience internationally, the focus on women empowerment, women programs, leadership are all sort of coming to the fore as an important step for crucial things such as not only human rights, because we comprise of over 50% of the population in most countries, in some countries even more, but also in terms of economic growth and economic development. And this is an area where I have working and doing a great deal of research to talk about, how the women, or as the OECD talks about, the female rate participation, how can we improve that in order to bring about more economic growth. So that's essentially. And I think, you have a good slide there which says, about 30%, but that varies country to country. It also varies according to positions. I mean, often you are in a leadership position, for example, at middle management, but the idea is to what extent is organizations are open, both institutionally and by way of regulation, to having more women as leaders. We are seeing an overturn of old concepts, and I think once again, quote, the report which I've given you to put on this link, which is Women in Business and Law, because it is through business and law, or rather through economic development and law, that a lot of these changes are taking place.
We think in for Women Group that meritocracy, in general sense, refers to any forms of government based on achievement. The merits may extend beyond intelligence and education to any mental or physical talent or work ethic. It has directly related to the Aristotelian term ethos. Plato and Aristotle advocated meritocracy. Plato in this Republic, but what do you think? What solutions would you propose from your professional role and experience about meritocracy and leadership for women?
I think that's a very good point that you raised, Ana, linking meritocracy to leadership, because that has been a very a given assumption. Yet, like we have quotes where say, leadership is for those who take it. It's we've quoted there. The thing is that leadership is for those who take it. Is all very well and good if the opportunities are open equally for men and women. So whilst we might have in some countries like European Union and Australia, USA, even the UK, because now it's no longer part of the European Union, but the thing is that in the Western world, we classify that as opportunities given to those who want to take it. This is all very well and good in one level, which is according to the law, there should be no discrimination between men and women. According to the cultures, however, we have what we call the unconscious bias. And that is that for many generations nowadays, we have lived with the image of power and authority being essentially based on meritocracy, undoubtedly, in the hands of men. Mm-hmm. We now have to go through what I call a paradigm shift. Feminine power combines with masculine power in order to lead. And the concept of meritocracy has to be relooked, because without a shadow of a doubt, women are in many, not all women, just some women. Mm-hmm. Not everyone wants to be a leader. Mm-hmm. Those that do prepare and prepare and prepare. Like the song from Lion's King, be prepared. My advice is be prepared, mm-hmm. because with leadership comes a number of barriers and opportunities and threats and so on. Almost like you have to conduct your own SWOT analysis, mm-hmm. in order to understand whether you are wanting to take on this challenge of leadership. And if you do, then meritocracy comes by way of education, by way of what the perception of others, and there we have to be very conscious as women that we don't position ourselves as subservient in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes in some cultures, I can quote many incidents in my own private life where I have been in the United Nations Forum, and whilst the subject is equality, which are now called parity, because it means to bring about an equilibrium between men and women, so that we can all progress towards a common goal of towards the betterment of society, be it at economic level, being at climate level, or environmental, or being at the social level. If we want to be leaders, we should not have obstacles. But the obstacles sometimes do not come essentially from institutional changes or legal changes. Sometimes, most often, come by way of cultural or unconscious bias of what we perceive to be men and women versus male and females, which is how we classify in an economic growth and economic development.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Africa, you are talking about role models.
Yes, role models are important, because if you see in authority a man, mm-hmm. well, everybody's going to perceive that authority is in the hands of men, as it has happened. But as women take on their, what I consider to be a rightful position as equal in society, whether you're a man or a female, you still have to have those individuals who actually show you the way ahead, the visionaries, the doers, the leaders, so that you can see where things are heading. And in my particular case, I have come across a number of women who are totally and utterly respect, because I've had the pleasure of being exposed to them through various means and bodies, and I believe that they are doing not only a terrific job as leaders in their organization, like I'm referring to Graciela Ramos in the OECD, I'm referring to Helen Clark in the United Nations, and I'm also referring to Madame Lagarde, whom I have the greatest respect from the International Monetary Fund. Mm-hmm. All of those leaders, all of those women would actually do the job of a being, a human, a person that has been hired to do the job. Mm-hmm. But they also carry forward the feminine view, the feminine perspective. Mm-hmm. The feminine perspective is by utmost and first they project, they are women. Mm-hmm. We are women. And therefore, in my own life, when people, like for example, when I was in the Global Women's Conference in London, when I started talking and in private meeting or petit comités, etc., there were a lot of younger women who would come over and say, well, what should I be doing? How can I get to, am I being too ambitious? Yeah. How can I match my being a woman, reproductive, wanting to get married and have children, and also wanting to achieve the best that I'm capable of achieving? And I always say, the second point is the most important. Be that what you're capable of achieving. And look at other women for examples to guide you, if you must. And especially in the public sector, the 4 women that we highlight, including myself, have all come from a public sector background. And of course, I'm also in private sector. I've been in academia. But the fact is that in that sector in particular, we function very well because the law protects us.
And please tell about these leaders: Gabriela Ramos, Helen Clark, Christine Lagarde.
I came across her in the G20, in the G20 that was being held in Australia, and I was part of a committee which was associated with sustainability. Now, when we talk about sustainability, we talk about because as our Ban Ki-moon, as the Director General of the United Nations, has recently been quoted, you cannot attain sustainability or sustainable goals if you do not include women and in the implementations of programs. So Gabriela Ramos runs, a very senior person in the Chief of Staff of the OECD, which is an economic body. Policies comes out of that, and she's very a strong advocate of women. And I have a presentation which I've given it to you with her. The second one, Helen Clark, from the Antipodas. Antipodas is where where I've been trained and developed, and as a social being, having been born in Spain, but I actually was raised in Australia. The whole thing is that Helen Clark did a fantastic job as one of the few women prime ministers in Australia. There's been one, and it didn't last. But Helen Clark ran his course, and was, until he finally gave up on the elections and democratic process, and then she went to the United Nations. She's currently being put forward as one of the leaders to take on the job as head of the United Nations. It is important to note that even the current Secretary General talks about the necessity to have a woman at the helm. So the dialogue, the paradigms are shifting, and role models are coming up, or what we recognize. The other one I've already mentioned, which is
Christine.
Madame Lagarde. Yes, Madame Lagarde has herself put forward incredibly interesting policies with regards to men. Now, that being that, things like it is not the sole responsibility of women to carry children, fertilization process. In other words, men and women contribute to the reproductive process, and once the child comes to being, they have a joint responsibility. So she's put in place things like paternity leave, and has been a great advocate for the more involvement of men and women in the domestic family affairs, because without the family unit or the core, then we do not have a society. Not only just economic growth, but we're looking at all those things. And so she's been she's been put forward for the head of the International Monetary Fund and World Bank.
And we think that you are a role model to Africa.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much for that honor. I have worked hard at it. I think all of us, if you look at the profile, it's not just about glory. It's about hard work. Okay.
Agree.
My own background, I can tell you, I joined the public service in Australia at a time when equal pay was not implemented in society. In other words, if you went outside the public service, there was no equal pay. Being a feminist, as I am, I went forward with the idea that I will not work and would not work for anyone who did not recognize my merit and not my gender. So there was a position there, an ideological position that drove me. It drove me towards two goals. The first one was a professional excellence,
Mm-hmm.
and a continued curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and drive towards that excellence
Mm-hmm.
and the fulfillment of my potential to the fullest.
Mm-hmm.
As a result of that, we achieved quite high levels in economics, and I continue sort of performing and improving everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been on the Premier's Council for Women, developing policy for women,
Mm-hmm.
especially those of culturally diverse background. And irrespective of where I am a great believer of what sustainability is all about,
Mm-hmm.
the future. So vision to action, the vision to action concept, which I have developed and interviewed recently with Voice of America, is where women are a voice, a feminine drive in any policy.
Mm-hmm.
And so currently I'm looking at climate change, the climate change forums, which are going to be taking place in COP in Marrakesh, in Morocco,
Mm-hmm.
in November. Start getting ready with round tables and this and the other, and where I see a great deal of policy coming out, a great deal of agreements, a lot of commitment from national governments, international institutions. What I do not see
Mm-hmm.
is the voice of women.
Yeah.
In other words, the gender parity in the policy of mitigating the effects of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm currently lobbying in this area, looking at where we can introduce food security,
Mm-hmm.
gender, and climate change.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ban Ki-moon, again, the United Nations pointed out that more than 50% of the food production is in the hands of women globally. So if there's any climate change and it affects food security, women plays a part.
Mm-hmm.
And we must ensure that that voice is heard. We do not want decisions about the future by men for women.
Mm-hmm.
We want decisions about the future with men, with women,
Mm-hmm.
for the betterment of society.
Mm-hmm. And Africa, public versus private. What do you think?
This is an interesting question, Anna. Public versus private. A lot of initiatives in multinationals have to be absolutely dodgy and utterly commended. I take one example. Bloomberg has produced a gender which allows investors to look at where gender is at in any one company in order to create a good investment. And so there's a lot of movement. The Goldman Sachs, both internally and outside, have produced wonderful reports on where the gender equations needs to be looked at better. I think private sector are realizing that the legislations is inevitably there, that they're losing an opportunity by not promoting and engaging women. However, private sector motivation is bottom line, and in addition to that, depending on what stage of development, they might be looking at non-financial. The issue that is being discussed and being implemented is the fact that women have a productive and reproductive function. And let us be proud of both, because without those two, society would not be standing. So when I talk about women from age girls, if we talk about girls from the beginning, they have to be educated and trained at home as equals. When they go to school, there's already laws and implementations to avoid too much cultural bias and discrimination. And so on, it moves forward. When a woman gets to the age of reproductive, which is obviously a very important function, see women who continue to work even though they're having children. We see women who don't work because they have children. And we see women who work part-time as a result of their children. Private sector has now come to terms with the fact that women have that function to fulfill, And I see some companies that have interesting programs, and government as well, a lot of government, where they allow the women to come back part-time, or they actually keep on feeding or training or retraining or doing all kinds of other programs that would allow them to come back after their children. Or, alternatively, very important trend is women over 40 and 50, between 40 and 50, where it's a because we then have 30 years of
experience.
30 years of productive labor. And us economists like to think in terms of years of productive labor. So that means that women of 40, 50 should be reconsidering entering the workforce even if they've never worked before.
Fully agree.
Some companies are open to that. But there's still a lot of work to be done.
Africa, please tell us about your new project, Center for Sustainability and Gender Economics.
Yes, I think, as you can see by my speech, I was on the Premier's Council, as I told you before. I've been on the G20, I've been on a number of bodies and so on and so forth. And then I decided that I would come to Spain, which is where my origins come from, and to look at the possibility of working with the European Union, sustainability, coming from green rubber, for example, where I'm a director, actually a recycling project. And so, combining a number of factors, I decided to set up the center. Two other individuals. One happens to be in the smart city architectural physical environment. And the other is a lawyer who has been a woman, who has been a businesswoman herself. She ran a company, and now, she's 50. And the other one is a male, I'm sorry to say. So we got one male, two females. I'm leading the center towards private sector, public sector involvement in sustainability and gender economics. In other words, to look at legislation with government and to look at policies with government, to look at programs, to add measures of sustainability like the Global Reporting Initiative, whereas I was ahead of that institution for a while, and so on, so that we can measure and we can change. So we undertake courses, auditing of organizations that are interested in seeing where they are at in terms of sustainability and where they are at in terms of the parity of women and men and at what stage they're at. Because as I was saying to you, there's an incredible potential for women over 40 to be re-entering the market, to fill for the women that are leaving for reproductive purposes.
And what's...
Yeah, I mean, essentially in Malaga at the moment, but I've received, I'm already receiving requests from the European Union to partner in Wales, and I don't know, how we're going to go over here, but I think the base is in here in Malaga. We'll see where we go. The world is our oyster, so we have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of wonderful people around us. Yesterday we had a round table where we had 8 people, 4 women and 4 men. And they were represented from public sector, from the private sector, from civil society. All of them looking at what we can do to make society better. A lot of work, as I said, and a lot of enthusiasm. The monetary equation is one where we're getting sponsors. We have to get sponsors, but I also have, I have to have as a requirement, because it's a think tank, the question of knowledge.
Yeah.
People have to have knowledge.
And what's about the talent bank?
Within the structure of the center, we have a thought leaders council, which are the sponsors and the companies who are contributing towards the direction, the strategic direction of the center, and where it's supposed to be focusing. The second layer that we have is the people that are going to be involved with us as members and also as allies or partners. The talent bank is where a person becomes a member of the Center for Sustainability and Gender Economics and puts in a request specific that any projects that come up, they would like to be considered either as a a specialist in gender economics.
Mm-hmm.
So we're building a data bank. But I call it talent because I emphasize that is the knowledge base of the center.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the directors, it's also the people who are members who are going to contribute towards projects and works and audits and etc. So, for example, when we did the course at the university, I called on Amsterdam to bring an expert to speak about measures under GRI.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we want to count on people who have knowledge to come forward, become members of the center, and be included in the talent bank under specific requirements and conditions that you are qualified and you have the knowledge.
But they may be practitioners or not.
Exactly. I'm not going to make the difference. There are a lot of stupid committees, like including the organization that I belong to, the Spanish Association of Economists. Most of them are academics. No, I don't want just academics. I will be forming an association with university, the University of Malaga or University of International University, to use their knowledge base. But I also want practitioners. Practitioners are very important because they actually have the experience.
Yeah, agree.
I need to have field experience.
Well, we are finishing shortly, Africa. How can people contact with you?
Well, I'm always available. I say that in honesty. Me primarily through email, even in this presentation. Up with me in YouTube and sorry, not YouTube, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is very important because I have a lot of following there. Most people would know that I make an impact in that area. And contact me, and then if you're interested in finding more about the center, I can actually direct it towards the executive director. Will answer questions and also, send you a membership form, etc., etc.
Okay, Africa. Thank you so much for your time. Nice day and take care.
Good day to everyone, and please don't give up. You know the saying, if you don't give up and you don't give in, everything will be okay.
Nice. Nice quote. Bye-bye. Bye.